Matthew 2, verse 1, if you turn to it. After Jesus, Yeshua, was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, Magi from the east arrived in Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he who's been born King of the Jews? We saw his star in the east. We have come to worship him." 1 week before leaving for Cuba, a man from Cuba appeared at our service, wanted to speak to me, a pastor. He had been tortured in the prisons of Castro, or he had been in prison for his faith. I don't believe he knew we were going to Cuba when he came. But he began to speak to us prophetically. He said, "You will go to Cuba as the Magi, bearing gifts, and you will enter the place where others could not enter. You will enter the palace of the king." I prayed as what I should share to the people of Cuba. What came to me immediately was the message of the Jubilee. Leviticus 25. You can turn to it or you can just listen. Verse 8. Count off 7 sevens of years, 7 times 7 years, so that 7 sevens of years amount to a period of 49 years. Then have the trumpet sounded everywhere on the 10th day of the 7th month, on the Day of Atonement. Sound the trumpet throughout the land. Consecrate the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout the land to all its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee for you. Each of you is to return to your family's property and to your clan, your family. The 50th year shall be a jubilee. Do not sow, reap what grows of itself, harvested, untended vines, for it is a jubilee. It is to be holy for you. In this year of jubilee, everyone is to return to their own property. The jubilee concerns those who lost their land, lost their family possession, lost their inheritance, and their freedom. That was Cuba. In 1959, Cuba was filled with people who lost their land, their family's possession, their inheritance, their family, and their freedom. I would go to Cuba proclaiming the Jubilee, the power of God for freedom to set free those in bondage and bring restoration. The message was spiritual, but you could take the message in other ways. And in many ways, it was a dangerous message to proclaim, to go there and preach anything that sounded like freedom, restoration, and liberty. But I was also led to bring something for Fidel Castro. Not that there was any guarantee of ever meeting him or seeing him or getting it to him, but if the Lord opened the door, 3 things. 1 was a Bible in Spanish, 2 was a letter, and 3 was a shofar, the trumpet of Jubilee, the vessel that in biblical times proclaims freedom throughout the land. I came with several people from Beth Israel. When we landed in Cuba, we had to pass through an inspection. The Cuban police were going through everything in our luggage. The one thing that held us up was the Jubilee trumpet. They didn't know what it was, and they found it suspicious. They saw it as if it was a weapon. They held it up, passed it back and forth. We were held up. We would not go through. They looked at each other. Finally, I decided to approach them. I took the shofar and showed them how it worked. And there in the station, I sounded it. They looked stunned, but they let us go. I said, wow, the trumpet works. I remember we were told not to attract crowds, and once we were in a Cuban store. When I came out, I was told I saw a crowd had gathered around our van. Someone had spotted the shofar in the van, and a large crowd was around it, and they wanted me to blow it. I wasn't sure if I should, but I did. At that moment, one of the men in the crowd starts jumping up and down and screaming. And we said, what happened? They said, the man is deaf, but he heard the sound of the shofar. In the following weeks, we went to minister throughout the churches of Cuba. Sometimes the churches were in barns. Sometimes at a bus stop was the church. Many times it had 3 walls, not 4 or 2. But every one of them was overflowing. In the midst of persecution, something had been born. Revival. We were there to give them hope and encouragement and strength. But something happened. In place after place after place, people in those churches would come up to me or our group and say, we saw visions of you coming before you came. And we see visions of you now as coming as the Magi. And it hit me, the word that the pastor from Cuba had given us. And the significance hit me then. Matthew 2. Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea in the days of Herod. The Magi from east arrived, saying, where is he who's been born? King of the Jews, we saw his star in the east, have come to worship him. When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Gathering together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where Messiah was to be born. They said, in Bethlehem of Judea. That is the place been written by the prophets. As for you, Bethlehem, land of Judah, by no means least among the leaders of Judah, for out of you shall come forth a ruler who will be shepherd of my people Israel. Then Herod secretly called the Magi, determined from them the exact time the star appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and search carefully for the child. And when you have found him, report to me that I may come too and worship him. After hearing the king, they went their way, and the star that they had seen in the east went on before them, came and stood over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. Coming to the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they fell to the ground, worshipped him. Opening their treasures, they presented to him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Having been warned by God in a dream not to return to Herod, the Magi left for their own country by another way. Now when they had gone, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, get up, take the child and his mother, and flee to Egypt. Remain there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to destroy him. So Joseph got up, took the child and his mother while it was still night, left for Egypt. He remained there until the death of Herod. The Magi had come to an unlikely place to witness a miracle, the newborn life of God. This was the significance. In a place of poverty and persecution, the miracle of God's life is born. So now we came to Cuba, unlikely place to witness a miracle, the newborn life of God. God's life was being birthed throughout the island in a revival in the midst of poverty and hardship, really no room for the believers. In the end, his life was being born among them, and revival was about to break forth. And as we did, the Magi were to bring gifts. We came there to strengthen them, encourage them. At the same time, in the account of the Magi, there was an opposition to that life. There was a throne and an aging king on the throne. And with Herod, the king was a man of as with Herod, this king in Cuba was a man of great resourcefulness, also ruthlessness. As with Herod, he had secret police. He would seek to monitor the people's activities, as Herod did. As with Herod, he was often paranoid, had a way of disposing of his enemies. And to Herod, the visit of the Magi wasn't an encouragement. It was a sign of alarm. It troubled him. He monitored them, the sign of another kingdom being birthed in the midst of his own. Ultimately, it was a sign of the end of his reign.
To find out how you can receive more of Jonathan's teachings, to receive special free gifts, or get in touch, go to hopeoftheworld.org or call toll-free 1-800-YESHUA-1. That's hopeoftheworld.org or call 1-800-YESHUA-1. That's 1-800-937-4821. You can also get more at Jonathan Cahn's Facebook page or write us direct at Hope of the World, Box 1111, Lodi, New Jersey 07644, USA. Hope of the World is dedicated to the goal of spreading God's Word and salvation to every land and people. We do this by spreading the Word throughout the world and sponsoring compassion projects to the most poor and needy around the earth. To get in touch or have a part in God's work, just write to Hope of the World, Box 1111, Lodi, New Jersey 07644, USA. Or go to hopeoftheworld.org or call 1-800-YESHUA-1. That's 1-800-937-4821.